Hello fellow horror geeks, and welcome to citygeek.com presents a review for Brahms, The Boy 2, sequel to The Boy. Very fitting title. People saw him like, sure, that was fine, that was okay. Didn't cost a lot of money, made a lot of money, so that's why you end up having a sequel. Because there's a lot of questioning like, why did this one get a sequel? Every time the trailer came up, you're like, sure, okay. One thing that horror fans talk about at conventions, especially at Crypticon, which you should always go to, of course, is that we will watch anything. We'll watch the biggest dreck, the worst pieces of shit for that one awesome moment. That one thing that you're going to remember, that you're going to tell your friends about. That one kill, that one moment, that one weird thing that where it went there. That can save a bad movie. Like, one good moment can save one bad movie. And while the movie isn't saved, I do want to note that towards the end, I'm not going to say exactly what happens yet. I'll do a little spoiler space at the end. There's 2 minutes in this movie at the climax that gets fucking insane. It goes almost Italian horror film. Throwing everything out there and seeing what sticks and what did stick and what they did go with. Because as the movie going along, I see a couple different threads that look like they might have been going for. Kind of wanted to see where the writing took them. A lot of red herrings, a lot of things that don't really make sense when you look back at it. Of like, well, these scenes happened this way, but the movie went here. Why did these happen? So it has a really messy script up to this point. But where it ultimately decides it wants to land is kind of wild. And it gets kind of wild for good 2 minutes. And I was cheering in the audience. I was alone in my screening, so it was fine. And I was like, yes, this is great, this is great. And then it went back to crap. But it was after 83 minutes of nothing, 2 minutes of awesome, and then their credits. It was funny that it went that way, because while I was watching it, I'm like, you know, if they just leaned into the concept of where I think they're going with this, of where I think this is heading, if they leaned into it and went just full bore, fuck if we piss people off, fuck if, you know, a lot of the general audience is left behind. If we go right into this and just kind of throw everything at the wall, this could be an interesting movie. And it did go where it was going, but they took until the very end to kind of really lean into it, because they were trying to keep the mystery up of what was actually happening, even though that mystery wasn't particularly interesting. That they leave all the cards close to their chest to the very end, and if they had showed some of those cards earlier, we could have had something more driven. Not just that particular moment I'm talking about, but some of the exposition and the things that set up the ending are missing from the first 2 acts, because we have a different movie, we have a different setup, because they didn't want to show their hand and wanted people to be surprised where it's going. Though when you start to really think about it as you're watching it, you kind of realize all this has to go in this way once you look into these particular aspects. But let's talk about getting to that point. Now, this is the sequel to the previous film. In the previous film, we had a nanny who was going to this big empty house where the parents were leaving her with this doll named Brahms, with these set of rules to follow with Brahms, otherwise things will go bad. Of course, she ignores the rules, the doll starts doing stuff on its own, and it turns out there's a guy living in the walls. Spoilers for a movie several years old, not very good. That if you're watching this review, you've probably seen. This will be based upon when you're watching the movie, you assume that you've seen the previous one. So we have a sequel coming in about 3 or 4 years later, when a family moves in nearby to somewhere else on the same grounds. We have the family of Katie Holmes and her husband and the kid. And we have the kid whose name is Jude, I think. I wrote it down, but I can't read my handwriting from this far away because it's starting to get dark in here. And they had trauma a few months ago when someone broke into their house and attacked them. The kid hasn't spoken since then, and Katie Holmes keeps having nightmares, and nightmares within nightmares, and that's lazy, and that bothers me so much. That Turning did that too, and that's a worse movie that came out the same year. So in order to try and get past this trauma, they decide to move out to the country, and they rent the guest house of the mansion from the first movie. When they get there, they find that the original mansion has now been turned into condos, and the kid finds the doll from the first movie. He takes it in, and the kid starts to act weird, just to act like the doll's possessing him, and they get rules, and the doll starts to move on its own. Katie Holmes is seeing this happen. No one else sees it, so we have a little bit there of, is she insane? Which kind of got me mad for a little while. If we're going through, are we going through a woman who had trauma who's now breaking? Because I'm kind of tired of that trope at this point. is the doll possessed? Is the kid doing this? Is it something else? There's a groundskeeper running around named Joe, who's played by Ralph Ineson, who you've seen in a whole bunch of things. Everything British he's been in, from Game of Thrones to he's in, well, this isn't British, but he's in The Witch a couple years ago. He played the dad. And he's walking around and being kind of creepy, and you're wondering if he has something to do with this, or something. So we have a couple of these different storylines coming along, and part of this is figuring out which one is the one that's going to go with. But the family themselves have no chemistry. They feel like a movie family. They feel like they met the first day of set, and that's it. And everyone there is really bland. Katie Holmes can put in a much better performance, whether for Dawson's Creek or The Gift or a couple of different things. Such a basic semblance of the plot. As it moves through, it does so in a very low energy, bland way. That's very repetitive. That doesn't really move anything forward, besides the kid getting a little more into Brahms as things move along, but without any sort of tension or drive, because we do have those multiple different setups, none of which are given enough energy to really drive the plot forward. You're more wondering, like, alright, where's this gonna go? Can it get somewhere? Can we get some tension? Can we introduce some other characters so we have some more people in danger? Something to that effect. So as it moves through, we have ideas, but none of them really are expanded on in any way. The filmmakers are playing everything really safe. They're playing everything very broad, so thus we're not getting a lot of anything interesting that we could have had. If they had a little more fun with things and let it go bigger, they could have had something much more interesting. If no one's really taking it seriously as they're coming in, the filmmakers hopefully should be aware of that and going to that more interesting place, which we ultimately do. So here's the point where I'm going to finish up the non-spoiler part and talk about that last little bit that really made me happy. We have not a lot of chemistry and not a lot of plot, not a lot of tension. We have a couple decent sequences along the way. Nothing really comes together. More of a bland bore that sometimes contradicts the first movie, doesn't really build on it at all. More of kind of the same in a slightly different, less interesting manner. So the first one wasn't good, wasn't particularly bad, it's kind of eh. This one's a little less eh. So I'm going to ultimately give this a D. Now let's talk about that spoiler. So where's this go into the end? Because I wouldn't be surprised if no one turned off there, because no one probably cares. So ultimately we find out that Brahms has been a multi-generational ghost haunting the people who lived in the house through this doll. So the one that we saw in the first movie was just the latest entry in this long series of children turning against anyone else who comes into the house because their obsession with this doll, which doesn't make any sense as what we saw in the first movie, doesn't make much sense in this movie either, because we don't find out any of that past until towards the end, when Katie Holmes decides to look up the history of this particular doll and finds out it's always lived in this house for about 200 years, which is, I want to know who's keeping track of that, because it had like literally the family history and these links to these news stories coming from this website that track the history of this particular version of this doll, because apparently it had a stamp on there that said what version it was. It was H909. So if it's been there for 200 years, I don't think it was so mass produced that there should be a stamp in this manner, let alone anyone keeping track of it on some sort of website, not realizing, oh wait, every owner of it who lives in the same house has been, all these kids have been possessed and killing family members and friends, and maybe we should do something about this. But no. So we do find out that not only is it a doll, but within it, because it gets its face smashed open again, which I swear it got smashed open last time, just to be a regular doll. But in this case, it gets its face smashed open again to find what looks to be an Italian zombie head. It's all burnt up, it's got some maggots, it's some rot over here, it's got this really asshole-like mouth, it looked like ass face from Preacher. From the comics, I'm not sure what it looks like on the show, I haven't actually watched the show. It has this interesting look that looks like, actually it reminded me of the doctor in the basement in the house side of the cemetery. That's what it looked like to me. And when it did that, it just happens at this moment where everything gets super nutty, in which you find out that this is what's going on, and it gets smashed open, you find out, you know, this underneath, and at this point the doll now has psychokinetic powers and lifts Ralph Ineson, who was the owner between this group and the last movie, into the air, and it shoots fire at him coming from the furnace, and it's crazy. When this happens, the music gets weird, the shots get weird, the shots get interesting, and almost like there's just 2 minutes that's amazing at exactly everything I wanted. That I swear if every movie just went, you know, let's go full Italian and just throw everything against the wall, all the spaghetti against the wall, and see what lands. It'd be much more interesting. Every movie should do that. Not every movie should do it, but movies like this should absolutely do it. Just go nuts. Give them something to talk about. It's going to cost $4 million. It's going to make all its money back. Just have fun. And when this 2 minutes just makes the movie interesting just enough that made me cheer, made me laugh, and made me had a great time, and then it's over. But this idea of this long history of all these murders and all these kids going insane and killing their families and hiding in walls and this happening again and again and again sounds so much interesting. It sounds like that's where the movie should have gone. We should have leaned into that earlier, leaned into that craziness. Just let us know this is a ghost, and let the ghost do whatever it's going to do. Give us those hints of that weirdness underneath it, and you would have had much more fun instead of this 80 minutes of blandness, these 2 minutes of awesome, and then the end. When it comes out on streaming for free, cut to that end. Maybe skip around a little bit, but you're not missing anything. The setup's there, then much of filler, and then the end. Give us more tension, give us more fun, give us more. You don't need a lot of gore, though gore's nice, but it's PG-13. Many great horror films are PG-13. This is a dig on PG-13. This is a dig on gore. There could have been something more amazing, and there's actually 2 minutes. Not only they elevate the movie, but also make me feel that the movie could have been better. Because if they had this little bit in them, why didn't we get that elsewhere? Even with those 2 minutes, the whole product is, it's a bland, middle of the road, nothing going, nothing bad, nothing great about it, nothing particularly good about it either. It isn't offensively bad like the last third of The Turning, and that's it for talking about Brahms, The Boy 2. Check out the review for The Lodge that I did from last week. Go over to citygeek.com to look at my review for Invisible Man, along with the other written recent reviews. Since we are kind of slow on the video reviews, we do have a lot more written things up there, along with my daily blog of everything I watched and a review for those. Expect reviews here soon for Portrait of a Lady on Fire, called The Wild and Sonic. This is my backlog. I'm trying to get through those as we get the chance. But of course, like, comment, subscribe. We'll see you next time at City of Geek. See ya.